Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here, and today we're going to take a look at the Game Week 13 top 1% template. So the 15 players here on the screen right now are the 15 highest owned players among the top 1% of FPL teams in the game right now. So we'll go through all these players one by one, and I'll discuss whether I feel like they will be dropping off the template and if other players will be coming in, or whether they would be staying in the template for the fixtures coming up. So if you guys do enjoy this video, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. Just before we jump into the video, thank you guys for all the support so far on our Christmas charity drive. As you guys can see above me on the signage here, I will be donating 20 pence per new subscriber from now to Christmas. We have raised close to £35 already so far. So thank you everyone for all the support, and if you just want to contribute as well, all you have to do is click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I will be donating more money to charity. If you want more information on the charity I'm donating to, all the information is in the description down below. So touching on the keepers first, I think it's no surprise that Areola and Turner are the two highest owned keepers at 69% for Areola and 46% for Matt Turner. So I will remember as well from Game Week 6 to Game Week 8, around that period when everyone was wild carding, it was a very popular keeper pairing to just go for Areola and Turner because both of them were super cheap. At that point in time, Areola was 4.1 and Matt Turner was 4.0. A lot of us wanted to go for Son, Salah and Haaland potentially, and that was when we needed the funds in the outfielders. So it made sense to just take all the money out of keepers and just go for the two cheapest playing keepers. Now fast forward to Game Week 13, Areola is at 4.3, Matt Turner is at 4.1, and Matt Turner has lost his place to Vladimir after playing or after that howler against Liverpool where he let Mo Salah put the ball into an open net. So basically, Turner's lost his spot, and in terms of Areola's performances, he does not seem as if it does not look convincing at all. He has not been keeping a lot of clean sheets, so there is a bit of concern for this particular keeper pairing that we're looking at right now. I think moving forward from Game Week 13 onwards, I doubt we would be selling Areola despite the fact that he has not been keeping clean sheets because the fixtures are still there for him. So I think at 4.3 million, it still makes sense to keep him. For my position as well, I have both these keepers. What I plan to do if I were to make a keeper transfer is actually sell Matt Turner and potentially bring in Flecken from Brentford, who has very, very good fixtures from Game Week 14 onwards. So I think moving forward, the template will start to shift. Areola will stay in the template, I imagine, but Turner should be dropping off. He's not playing anymore, and I feel like we will have that money moving forward to upgrade Turner to a 4.5 million keeper, someone like Flecken, and then we can rotate him with Areola as well. Do bear in mind for Flecken that there will be a blank game week in Game Week 18 for Brentford, and that's when you probably will need Areola then as well. But I think moving forward, that will be the keeper pairing, or that will be the template keeper pairing for the rest of the season until we wildcard again. So in defense, it's Medicash, Tsimikas, Trippier, Saliba, and Joachim Andersen who are the highest owned defenders in the top 1% template right now. So covering the highest owned player first, at 61% is Medicash, and to be honest, he has been quite a disappointment. I brought him into my team in Game Week 8, and in the past 5 game weeks, he's only scored 11 points. So that's slightly more than 2 points per game. And honestly, we were expecting a lot more from Medicash, given that in the earlier game weeks, we will remember from the start of the season, he was scoring quite a number of double-digit hauls, and we were getting very excited for Aston Villa's fixture turn. We all brought him in, and once that happened, he started to dry up in terms of returns. Clean sheets have been few and far between for Aston Villa, and on top of that, his attacking returns have kind of dried up as well. So I do imagine that Medicash will drop in ownership because some people will be losing patience. He is also an easy route to players like Saliba, who we will cover later on, and also Gabriel if you are short of funds and you want to downgrade as well. So Arsenal defenders, I think moving forward will be the ones we want to go for, and Medicash offers a pretty easy route there. So moving forward, I do imagine that the fixtures that are tough for Aston Villa will start to push people to sell Medicash as well. So that's what I think about Medicash. As for Tsimikas, he's at 52% ownership. He is also an interesting player because he's coming off a double-digit haul in Game Week 12. Do we buy him moving forward? Of course not in Game Week 13 because he has Man City, but after that, the 3 fixtures from Game Week 15 onwards look pretty good. Game week 14 onwards look pretty good for Tsimikas. So do we go out to buy him now that there's not a lot of defenders to go for and he's only at 4.5 million? It's pretty cheap. He has that double-digit haul in him if Liverpool do keep a clean sheet and if he keeps getting attacking returns. But the thing is, will he start is also another question that we don't really know. Hopefully in the next couple of game weeks we will get more information from Jurgen Klopp. But the thing is, in game week 12 we all expected him to be benched after that horrible performance against Toulouse. So moving forward, I think it's hard to say whether he's a definite buy or sell. So that's a tricky player to navigate around. Tsimikas at 52%. Kieran Trippier at 52% as well, similar ownership to Tsimikas. The Newcastle defense right now is kind of in a tricky position also because they have quite a number of injuries. Dan Burn should be out till the new year. Botman does not seem like he's returning anytime soon. Lewis Hall, Kieran Trippier, and Livramento seem to be the fullbacks right now. And of course, there's a bit of shuffling going on. Kieran Trippier sometimes playing on the right. Livramento could be playing left back. That could swap around as well. And maybe Lewis Hall comes in, Kieran Trippier stays at right back. So there's a bit of shuffling going on, and generally that's not very good for the defense. Previously, their first team defense, when all of their defenders were back, was definitely a at least a top 3 defense in the league. But looking at the way that the injuries are coming for them, you could start to see the Newcastle clean sheets dry up. So I think it's hard to say whether Kieran Trippier will be justifying his 7 million price tag. So it's also hard to say whether it's time to buy Kieran Trippier if you don't have him, or whether it's time to sell him if you still have him. Right? So I do think like the ownership for Kieran Trippier will start to drop if he continues to blank in the next couple of game weeks. Now, Saliba is at 32%. I imagine this ownership will continue to rise, and that's because there aren't a lot of defenders to go for right now. Arsenal's fixtures moving forward are one of the better ones. Saliba, he's slightly more expensive. He's more than 5 million now. He's risen quite a bit since his starting price, but he's definitely more nailed than Gabriel. And he's just come off an attacking return in game week 12 as well. So I do imagine his ownership will just start to soar, and his price will probably rise before the game week 13 deadline anyways. So I will imagine he will start to rise, and also Gabriel is a player that I imagine a couple of people will start to go for in terms of Arsenal defenders. Now, for Joachim Andersen, who's the last defender here to cover, he's at 20% ownership. I do imagine this will start to drop, and this is because Crystal Palace's good fixtures are starting to dry up. A lot of us hopped onto Anderson earlier on. If you had money, of course, you hopped onto Anderson because he did have that knack for pulling off really good passes from deep that could turn into assists. So he also has that goal in him once in a while. So there's always that kind of that spur of attacking threat from Anderson that a lot of us went for earlier on. But his fixtures are starting to dry up, so I think he will start to drop off. And I think the natural replacement moving forward, at least from game week 15 or 16 onwards, I imagine who will come into the template is Levi Colwill. He's at 4.5 million, really cheap. He was injured in game week 12, but I imagine that he will come into the template because Chelsea's fixtures are starting to look really good. And Chelsea are still putting up very, very good defensive numbers in terms of expected goals conceded. So I feel like Levi Colwill will start to come into this template. Maybe a Reece James potentially. And these players that I just mentioned would potentially drop in ownership. So next up in midfield, it's Salah, Son, Bowen, Saka, and Diaby. I think it's the usual suspects here that we're looking at. Mo Salah at 73% ownership is no surprise at all. He's been the most consistent player in FPL this season. He's been returning in almost every other game, and he's a very, very strong captain option for the next coming game weeks as well. So definitely have to have him, and potentially I see this ownership rising as well because 73% also means that 27% of managers don't have him, so they will have to be finding a route for him. In game week 13, they have Man City, but from game week 14 onwards, Liverpool's fixtures are actually pretty good, so they will be getting him sooner rather than later, the players who don't have Salah. So his ownership, I think, will continue to rise. For Son, he's a player that I think will start to drop off the template potentially if Tottenham's performances aren't as convincing moving forward, because of course James Maddison will be out for quite a while, quite a couple of months in fact, so that should probably have an effect on how threatening Spurs are on the attack, and that could affect Son's returns as well. So we already saw against Wolves, Son blanked there and Spurs of course lost 2-1 to Wolves. So if that kind of keeps up, maybe we see a drop off in their performance. Some of us could be tempted to sell Son, free up some funds to spread around elsewhere as well. So for Jarrod Bowen, he's at 53%. His ownership has been on the rise for quite a number of game weeks already. Every single game week, he is one of the highest transferred in players. And he's actually one of the players that has risen in price the most this season. So at 53%, I think he's only scraping the surface. I think his ownership could be as high as 60 to 65% in the top 1% moving forward. Right. So of course he plays Burnley in game week 13. I think he's potentially a differential captain shout as well. Right now, Saka at 49%. Now, in terms of Arsenal's fixtures, as I mentioned just now for Saliba, their fixtures are pretty good, and Saka is the one that's the most nailed in terms of attackers. But I think Odegaard being injured and just not being there to kind of link up the play between the attackers has kind of affected Saka's output a little bit, right? So I think hopefully when Odegaard comes back, Saka's output will start to rise. I still feel like Saka is the first choice penalty taker, and I don't think Arsenal are in a place right now, attackingly at least, for Saka to be giving away penalties when he is the first choice penalty taker. So I do still feel like Saka will stay in the template. I think in terms of Arsenal attackers, we wouldn't go elsewhere. Trossard is always a little bit of a risk in terms of whether he will start or Martinelli will start. And then of course, Gabriel Jesus seems to be back in the team as well. So maybe Nketiah may drop off. So once again, I think Saka is still the default Arsenal player to go for. And I just hope that his returns will start to come, right? Because I have him in my team as well. I think his ownership will at least hover around this kind of range of 49%. For Diaby at 37%, he's been a very, very interesting pick for the top 1% managers because he's come off quite a decent performance. He's double-digit haul, I think, in game week 11 as well. In game week 12, of course, he got that, I guess, jammy assist. He may or may not have touched the ball before Anthony Robinson put it into his own net. But at the end of the day, I think Diaby, in terms of an attacking asset, for the price that he's at, playing for a team like Aston Villa who looks so good in attack, I think he's a value budget player. Right, so 37% ownership. The fixtures for Aston Villa moving forward will start to turn a little bit. And there will be a fixture turn for Mbeumo as well from game week 14 onwards. So I think Diaby offers a pretty easy route. Right, Diaby to Mbeumo will be quite a popular transfer, I imagine, next game week in game week 14. So I do imagine that because of that, his ownership will start to drop and Mbeumo will come into this template. So looking at the forwards, it's Ollie Watkins, Erling Haaland, and Julian Alvarez. So the most jarring stat here, I would imagine, is that Erling Haaland is only at 61% when Ollie Watkins is at 71%. And I think it kind of shows the state of the game as well, where I will remember earlier on in the season, around game week 6 to game week 8, some of us were tempted to go without Haaland when we were wildcarding then. That has obviously worked out pretty well, at least before game week 12, because game week 12 Haaland came off a 16-pointer as well. Him scoring a double-digit haul against Manchester United wasn't as bad that game week, but now in game week 12, which just ended, Erling Haaland scored, I think, 16 points. So it seems as if now he's scoring against the big teams and he's not really scoring against the weaker teams. But that said, it kind of shows the state of the game, as I mentioned, where there will be some teams or quite a number of teams in this top 1% template here that don't have Haaland. It's a good 39%. It's close to 40% of managers in the top 1% don't have Erling Haaland. Right, so they will be looking for a route to get him back, and that's why I obviously feel like his ownership will start to rise. From game week 15 to game week 16 onwards, that is when to bring Man City attackers back. They will have Luton, Crystal Palace, etc. The fixtures are pretty good, and that's when I think Haaland will be the default captain option again. So those who went without Haaland will start to bring him back. Right, as for Ollie Watkins at 71%, as I mentioned for players like Diaby and Cash, Aston Villa's fixtures will start to dry up. I imagine that his ownership will start to drop. But that said, he does have a good fixture of Sheffield United in game week 18. So if we are able to keep Ollie Watkins from now, game week 13, all the way up till then, we will have a decent forward playing Sheffield United, who is one of the poorest defenses in the league so far, right? So Ollie Watkins is an interesting player. Let me know if you're keeping him or if you will be selling him as soon as now in Game Week 13, right? Let me know down in the comments below. Last player that we haven't covered is Julian Alvarez. So 37% ownership. He's blanked in the last 2 game weeks, I think, and his returns have been dropping off. But that said, as I mentioned for Erling Haaland just now, the fixtures will start to turn, and that's why I imagine that Julian Alvarez, as we always knew from the earlier game weeks as well, he's the next best Man City attacker to own, and that's why from game week 15 to 16 onwards, I think people will start to jump on Alvarez instead. So if you have him, I think you could just keep him all the way until then, right? When people start to bring him in, because for my own team as well, I'll be looking to bring Julian Alvarez in game week 16 when Man City play Luton. So I do have plans for that, and I think a lot of people will be jumping on him once the Man City fixtures turn. So for those of you who have him, I imagine you would keep him, and those that don't have him, you will probably see a rise in ownership for him. So there we go with the forwards, and that's in general what I think about this whole 15-man top 1% template right now. Let me know what you guys think of some of the players here, and if I missed out any of these players that you think will come into the template, let me know down in the comments below. I'll be keen to know. But thank you for watching to this point. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. Once again, shouting out the charity drive that we're doing. So all you have to do is subscribe, and I will be donating more to charity. So all for a good cause. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys in more Game Week 13 content very soon. Bye bye.